Previously, we already set up our lint, and in this video, I will show you how to render a list into our JSX. When I say list, I mean a list of array. So imagine we have an array of thousands data, and we want each of the data to be put into our HTML. We don't want to create thousand line of repetitive HTML, are we? By rendering the list into React JSX, we only create one line of HTML and let the React handle the rest. Okay, without further ado, let's dive into our project. Before jumping into our React project, let's refresh our memory about JavaScript manipulating data using map function. The most common data manipulation methods in JavaScript is using map function or map method. It will iterate over each item in a list in order to return a new version of each item. Let's see it in action.
For example, we have a variable named number, and in this variable we have list array. Let's write 1, 2, 3, and 4. Also, we want to create exponential of those number in a new variable named exponential. We will use the map function to manipulate the data in numbers, and we first call the variable of numbers and mapping, and then callback function. We will put a parameter of number. See, this one is numbers from our variable numbers, and we put this in a plural. Yeah. In best practice, when we creating an array of data, we will put the array of data in a plural variable name. So when we mapping or we iterate each of the data, this data, we can call it in a singular variable. So I put the parameter variable number without an s. So this number, this parameter will represent each of the data. Okay, and then we just return number times number. Okay, and if we console the exponential, we save it, and let's run it. Oh, I forgot to call the index.js in the body. Fix index.js. See, by using map function, we manipulating the data from the number array into new data that each of the data will be timed by itself. 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, and 4 times 4. Okay, this is how the map function in JavaScript, just to refresh our memory.
Now, after refresh our memory on how to use map method in regular JavaScript, let's see how map method is used in React. In React, map method is used to transform list of items into JSX by returning JSX for each of the item in the array list. Let's see it in our code to understand it better.
In our file, let's create another variable named list, and within this list let's create an array, and for the first item let's create an object, and with the title of object URL, an author, num comment, point, and object ID as a key. And then for the second value, let's create another object. The title is Redux, URL is redux.js.org, the author, num command, the point, and the object ID. Okay, let's save it. So we have another variable named list, and the value of the list is an array of objects that contain these two objects. And then let us call our object list in our JSX. Let's give it a horizontal line, and just for example, let's call our title first. Okay, let us use our map method first. Let's call our object, our array of objects here, list, and then let us mapping our function, I mean our array with a map method, and then create the callback function, and we iterate each of the item in the list array using item parameter, and then in the function body let us just return the title by calling each of the item in the list by calling the parameter item, and then we call the title, this title. We can see that we have another error by our linting. It said missing key prop for element in iterator. So we should put the key here, and we should choose an object that is unique. The value is unique, and it must be sure that the value is not repeated in another value. Okay, So if we go back to our list item, we have object ID, and the value of object ID is always unique by increment of 1 for each of the ID. So we use object ID as the key. Let's save it. And we can see our title has been rendered by using map method in our React.
After watching the video, now you can understand how rendering the data in JSX works. So, if we have only had one data, or some people call it state instead of data, by using JSX, it will render the data into HTML when we call it. Also, when we have a lot of data and store it in an array list, we can use map method to iterate each of the data in the array and render it one by one into our HTML. The most important thing and need to note when it comes to iterating is the key attribute. The sole functionality of key attribute is whenever React need to re-render a list, React will check if the item has changed or not. And by using key attribute, React can effectively replace the changed items. And if not using key attribute, React will not update the list effectively. What I mean by that, let me explain it to you. So, for example, in our previous list, we only have two items, React and Redux. Let's say we want to add another data. We want to add JavaScript as the third data. Now, without key attribute, behind the scene, instead of inserting the new data first, React will change the React data into JavaScript. So it will update the React data into JavaScript and Redux data into React. And lastly, instead of inserting new JavaScript data, it will insert Redux as their new data. Even though the result will look exactly as we want it, we have three data, but behind the scene, React did not update the data effectively. But when we using key attribute, behind the scene, React will insert the new JavaScript data first, and then keeping the other two data without updating it. Okay? Sometimes when we face real data, the data did not have any unique value that can be used as a key. So what is the solution if we found this case? We can use index as an identifier, but please take notes that using index as an identifier is the last resort and should be avoided because it will have the same rendering issue as the previous explanation I mentioned. and will cause some bugs in our user interface. But as the last resort, and if the list does not change its order in any way, it is fine to use index. Okay. Now let's finish our list rendering in the JSX.
Now let's create an order list and move our map function into an order list. Okay, and instead of returning it one line, let's create another line. So we need to create an open and close parenthesis, and let's create our first list with the key of item and get id plus our list. And then let's create a span and the URL. Let's take it from our list item.url. Let me see. Okay, item.url, and then let's call our title. Next, let's call our author. Let's enclose it with a span item.author. Next, another span. Let's call item num command. And the last one, let's call our point. Okay, save it and let's see. Okay, great. Now we have our list render in our JSX.
Okay, I think that it's all for the current lesson. In the next video, let's create another component by separating our add component. We will learn how to render another component into another component. By the end of the video, you will learn how to scale your application. See you in the next video.
If you find my videos are useful, don't forget to like and subscribe my channel. Thank you.